What is up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the Bootleg Football Podcast. I am your host, Brett Coleman, with my wonderful co-host and one of my best friends on this planet, EJ Snyder. We have a monster episode for you today. Absolutely jam-packed. Probably going to be one of our longest episodes in a while, to be honest, because we got a lot to go over, including a few monumental trades that are probably going to shift the league in several big ways over the next few years. We've got a huge interview with one of the best O-line gurus out there in Brandon Thorn. And then we have a pretty sizable discussion on some of the disruptors, quote unquote, at various positions along the defensive line, defensive end, defensive tackle, the all-encompassing edge term, whatever you want to call it. Who are some of our favorite disruptors of the 2021 draft class? So without further ado, EJ, buddy, how you doing? What are you drinking tonight?
I'm psyched. I'm so stacked that we get to kick off our draft focus interviews. We've been lining these up for a while. We've got a bunch of them. Brandon is kicking it off for us, and he's just awesome. We had a good time recording that interview, so we get to let everybody see that, which is really cool. We get to talk about the defensive side of the ball. We did it a little bit in the 10 gems on defense, but we get to dig in a little bit deeper. We've had some folks ask on social media for a bit of a deeper dive. And I was, again, that lucky timing. I was able to say, oh, we might just have something for you cooking. And to celebrate, I have a beer from a brewery that I know because I've actually met the guys that do it. This is Wet Coast Brewing, and this is their cream ale. This is a brewing company that was started by a couple of firefighters, active duty firefighters. And if you know anything about active duty firefighters, they have a lot of time off. They work like 3 or 4 days straight, 24-hour shifts, and then they get like 8 or 9 days off. And these two guys really like beer. So they got a little small industrial space over in Gig Harbor and started brewing beer a few years ago. And all their stuff's amazing. Happens to be right next to a bike shop that a buddy of mine manages. So been to the brewery, hung out with these guys. Highly recommend if you ever make it up to the Northwest and you can find some Wet Coast offerings. But going to enjoy that. And yeah, just a jam-packed show. Tons and tons to talk about. If we come in under 2 hours, I will be flat stunned.
Well, you enjoying a microbrew started by first responders that's next to a bike shop might be the most Pacific Northwest thing that's ever come out of your mouth. And that's saying a lot. Just saying.
That's a high bar or a low bar. I don't know. Depends on who you talk to.
I just have coffee tonight because I have lots of things
got
to
work
record.
to do.
Somebody has work to do. And fun fact, it's a lot harder to edit videos when you're completely smashed. So I am drinking coffee. Yeah, who knew? Not that you can really tell the difference, but I'm drinking coffee. But before we get into the great interview we had with Brandon, why don't we talk about these trades that went down a few days ago? And it was kind of a two-pronged trade between the 49ers, Dolphins, and Eagles. So I'll kind of read off just where everybody ended up. The picks that Miami ended up with were number 6 and number 156 this year from the Eagles. They still have a 2022 first rounder and third rounder from the 49ers and a 2023 first rounder on top of that. So they came out very, very well at the back end of this. The 49ers move up to number 3 after giving up those 2 extra first rounders and that extra third rounder. And the Eagles move from number 6 ultimately to number 12, which was originally from the 49ers, then went to the Dolphins, now to the Eagles. They also get number 123 from the Dolphins and a 2022 first rounder that used to belong to the 49ers that now belongs to the Eagles. So I guess you could say the 49ers paid both the Eagles and the Dolphins to move up to number 3. So they must have somebody in mind that they really, really like. There's been rampant speculation that it's Mac Jones. There's been kind of tinfoil hat conspiracy theories about that being a smokescreen being precipitated by Chris Sims, who's smokescreened for them in the past because he's best buddies with Kyle Shanahan, and that they really want Justin Fields because they sent Adam Peters, their assistant GM and kind of their top scout, over to Ohio State today Well, Kyle and John Lynch were at Alabama to see Mac Jones. So there's been some speculation that they're faking that they want Mac Jones to keep somebody else from trading up to number 2, and that they are kind of locked in on Justin Fields. I don't know what to think anymore. All I know is this. It doesn't matter whether it's Mac Jones, whether it's Justin Fields, whether it's Trey Lance, who's apparently dating Colin Cowherd's daughter. Maybe, possibly. Why Colin thinks he's QB2. We'll see. Whether it's any of those guys, I don't think it matters, because Kyle Shanahan's offense is built for success pretty much no matter who's there. Like, they won games with Nick Mullins. They're going to be fine. So would I have taken Justin Fields out of all those guys? Yes. Are they still going to be good no matter what? Yeah. So in the end, 49ers fans, don't worry about it. You're going to be fine. It literally doesn't matter who they take.
It matters, but it doesn't matter as much as people are making it out to. And I know people say, how can you say that? And I can say that with absolute certainty, because 50% of the guys picked in the top round are not going to work out as quarterbacks. Mm-hmm. And you are going to be lucky if any of them are still playing for their original franchise in 5 years.
Yeah.
Like, that's the facts, folks. That's not one class that bombed out. That's over the past, 3-4 years. We have like literally 1 or 2 guys that are still in the same spot doing the same thing for the same team.
I think odds are every first round quarterback up to 2017. I think 2017 is like the furthest back it goes where a first round quarterback is still in the roster. And those guys just are finishing their rookie deals now. That's how much of a crapshoot it is.
So the odds are, the whole thing's a mess. And Shanahan and Lynch got together and said, we want to be comfortable, and we are comfortable with anybody at 3. There's no way you pay that much draft capital, money, whatever you want to call it, if you are not settled that you're going to get a guy you want. And let's face it, it's probably a quarterback. You don't do that for a non-quarterback. And there's also been a ton of speculation around the incumbent starter, Jimmy G, right? And they're like, Jimmy's our starter. And everybody throws up all the quotes that, we're not signing OBJ to trade him. And, blank is our guy. And then he's out the door. That happens all the time this time of year. And I don't blame people for doubting that. But it's incredibly possible, especially if they are really going deep and they want Trey Lance for some reason, that you would play Jimmy G for a year and get Trey Lance ready. Trey Lance is a guy that is not going to be super ready out of the gate. He had 1 full season. He had 1 game this year. He's got the least number of pass sets, throws, starts of any of the top 4. He's got tremendous physical skills and showed a lot of promise in his freshman year. Don't get me wrong, but college is different than the NFL. And if your roster is loaded up to make a run, the 49ers are in that place. They are in no way rebuilding. You might not want to trot out a rookie with very limited starts to try and lead you to the promised land. You'd much rather lean on a guy like Jimmy G. And hey, if he gets hurt, sure, you could bring in a guy like Trey Lance. I'm not saying Lance is their guy. I'm saying that's very possibly a strategy that's hooked together. Who I'd take is sort of irrelevant. And if you want the biggest tinfoil hat conspiracy, it's that they knew that the Jets are not taking a quarterback.
Well, that's also kind of part of Ted's theory, is that Jets coaching staff, which seems like half
49ers East.
49ers, it's 49ers East. It's Saleh, it's McDaniel, all those guys, that they basically said, hey, we're good with Sam, but we still have a guy that we want it too. So go to 3. Because remember how this all kind of came together on the day of Zach Wilson's pro day, where the entire league was in one spot, basically, because BYU's got a fucking million guys coming out this year. So everybody was at BYU's pro day. There's backdoor conversations, especially between all these guys that are really, really good friends.
For sure. We just talked about Trey Lance, and all the Russell Wilson speculation came because Ryan Pace and John Schneider were in Fargo at Trey Lance's pro day. And Ryan Pace said, here's all my goodies. And John Schneider said, great, I'll think about it. So absolutely that stuff happens.
I mean, Shanahan, Saleh, the LaFleurs, like they're all in each other's weddings. You don't think that they talk about this kind of stuff? Like I could totally see the Jets saying like, we want Jamar Chase. We don't feel comfortable moving down because we feel like Atlanta's going to take Jamar Chase. So we're just letting you know, go to Miami because Miami's going to stick with Tua. I could absolutely see that happening. And to be honest, I got a lot of flack from Falcons fans, by the way, saying there's no way Atlanta takes Jamar Chase. Like Julio's 32 and Ridley's going to be 28 when he's signing his second contract. And Russell Gage is going to be a free agent, I think, next year.
Yeah.
They need they need young star receivers. They're clearly locked into Matt Ryan for at least the next 2 years. Like they need people. So yeah, I could see the Jets basically saying like, we don't want to move down at all because the guy we want is probably not going to last 2 picks after us. Go to Miami. Miami's doing everything they can to just collect picks because Greer loves picks. Like that's a scenario that I think is not only possible but extraordinarily likely.
Yeah, and at that point, we're not talking about, we're talking about a fit that we had talked about previously, which was the possibility of a Zach Wilson playing in a Shanahan offense. And it could be Fields, could be Wilson. It's probably not Trevor. Like Urban seems pretty locked in on Trevor and doesn't
They've all but said
there doesn't seem to be a lot of intrigue around the first pick. They're not listening to anybody. They're taking the guy. And that's fine. But if the Jets, tinfoil hat theory comes true, you're looking at Wilson versus Fields. And I know everybody's been comparing Fields and Mac Jones over the last week for the San Francisco pick, but if you brought Wilson into the conversation, it's a different conversation, especially in terms of the way that San Francisco wide zone works and what BYU ran with Wilson in a wide zone. Anyways, all kinds of interesting stuff.
It fits.
We should talk about Miami as well, because I put out a tweet after this happened. So, by the way, fun fact, I was on a walk when this happened. Like, I took a break from my regular job, which is right here, and I went outside and I got some fresh air and I walked up and down the road and I came back and I was like, holy hell, what? Like, you're checking all the accounts, you're looking for the verified marks, and it's just all over Twitter, and you're like, oh my God, this actually happened like in the last 15 minutes. Like, I didn't sleep through this. Like, the entire top third of the draft just changed hands. Like, what in the world? And so when the dust settles, I put out a tweet that said, Chris Greer, say his name. This is amazing work. Now, Chris Greer is notably anti-publicity. He does very few any media things. He is not a guy that likes the light on him. But he's incredibly skilled. He came on the year before Flores. He picks Laramie Tunsil. Flores comes on and says, hey, this guy that you picked with your very first round pick, right? Or very, very first high pick, like, we need to jettison him because it's going to get us a bunch of stuff. And he's a good fit for our system, but we're at a place by the time we're going to be paying him in a couple of years, we could get more out of him as picks, right? So they flip him. And Laramie Tunsil ends up being, 4 first-round picks and a third?
They've turned it into 4 first-round picks and a third.
So Chris Greer took one of his initial high picks as an offensive lineman. Very talented guy, obviously, that had a unceremonious drop on draft day, into 4 first-round picks and a third. That, from a team building standpoint, is, bow down and we're not worthy stuff. That's Wayne's World. It's ridiculous. And Chris Greer's never going to toot his own horn about it. He's never going to say anything about it. But you better take notice when Miami is competing for the AFC East, next year, depending on how this draft goes, or certainly the year after that, pushing real hard to bump Buffalo off the pedestal. And Brandon Beane and his crew have done a great job as well. But Chris Greer is in no way handing them anything. And Miami's still got a ton of ammo. The only downside I see is I'm really interested who Miami picks at 6. Again, if Miami stays at 6, and I think they do because they paid to get back up there. They spent a first-round pick from next year to move from 12 to 6. So that tells me that they want a guy that they don't think really has a chance of being there at 12. Like, that's what they invested that first round pick in, is securing the services of a guy. They looked at the top. They knew they were trading with San Francisco. They knew pretty much what was going to go on there. And they said, 12's not quite enough. So they got Philly to swap, and they pay a first round pick next year for 6 spots in this draft. That just tells me they've got a guy at 6 that they're pretty sure isn't going to be there at 12. If you're looking at Miami's roster, it's probably a receiver. It's probably the second receiver off the board. Maybe they hope it's the first. But that to me says, like, Chase, if he doesn't go, but again, we talked about Chase, the very good possibility that the Chase is gone. The fact that Chase is gone by 6, I agree with that. So you're probably looking at somebody Tua is very familiar with in Waddle or Devontae Smith, if that's their choice. But I think it would be Waddle at that point.
I think Waddle he'd be like Albert Wilson on steroids for them, and they loved Albert Wilson. I would think in terms of pure fit, like, as much as I think Devonta Smith is good for them, he's a separator, and we know that Tua is more of a see it, throw it kind of guy right now. He wants somebody that generates separation. I think Waddle generates as much separation as Devonta in different ways, but he does.
Yeah.
But I think his ceiling is higher. His yak ability is better. I think he can be a true X factor for Tua. My only other theory was, no matter what, there's going to be wide receivers available at 12. There's only one tight end
I thought about
that might be there.
But Pitts is different. We're talking about Kyle Pitts from Florida, and Pitts is different. He is a true blue chip player in this draft. I think he's either the second or the third best player in this draft, regardless of position. I think you can make a case for second, even with Penei Sewell. He's just better at doing his job than almost anybody else is at doing their job in this draft. He's a tremendous player. And sometimes you just reach for those guys. You just go get them. And I could see it, but they really like Gesicki, and they use him a lot. I'm not saying Gesicki and Pitts are the same guy. They're not, but they really like Gesicki, and they use him a ton. He's a focal point of their offense. Tua's obviously comfortable with him. Fitzpatrick was very comfortable with him. He had a good year last year and made a bunch of impact for them. Now Pitts is a different category. You almost have to consider him a wide receiver with his production. He's that, we talked about this. He's that Travis Kelce, Darren Waller type of TE that could challenge for the league lead in receiving, even though he's a tight end. And those guys are extremely rare. They're like unicorns. So I could see that. It would be crazy 12 personnel in Miami, because you'd have Gesicki and Pitts, and forget about it. And they can get their receivers later on down. As you said, there's receivers in this draft. It's very deep. They don't have to get one of the top ones. I think they really want an alpha, and I think that's why they move back up, because, again, your wide receiver production is typically going to outweigh tight end production. Kyle Pitts maybe notwithstanding, because he blurs the line. But I would say that's probably the move. And Dolphins fans will wonder if that was worth a first rounder next year, those 6 spots, again, with the depth at wide receiver and what they could have gotten in terms of number of chances. But again, at this point, I'm not doubting Chris Grier on pretty much anything he's doing, because he is turning magic down there in Miami.
Yeah, there's a few general managers out there that you just kind of just let them do their thing, and you assume that they're going to be correct. And I think Grier has proven to be in that category. I'd say I can't name 5 GMs better than him in the league right now in terms of what he's been able to do, cultivating assets and then hitting on assets, making prudent free agent signings. Time will tell if he's going to regret the Tua versus Herbert decision. But at the same time, if Tua doesn't work out, I also trust him to be able to find a guy eventually, because he hits on more picks than he misses.
And they've got the assets at this point. Somebody made that very valid point. It might have been Rich Eisen, but I could be easily miscrediting that. There was so much swirl around these two trades when they happened. But they said, look, it's a perfect position. You give Tua a whole bunch of weapons this year in the draft. You've got a pretty decent base of offensive line that you started. You add a couple pieces to that. Again, they have plenty of draft picks this year. You give him everything and you see how he does. And if he doesn't do it, you've got picks next year. You've got ammo. You've got a couple of first round. You can move up, right?
Yeah.
And you can trade your way right back in and go back up and get a quarterback if you need to. There is no like, well, we spent our pick and now we got to sit on it for 4 years because we don't have any more capital. And no, like if Tua doesn't work out this year, fully surrounded by a cast, I would not put it past Chris Grier at all to say, nice, thanks, appreciate it, but we've got a division to win. We're getting, whoever next year.
I mean, the 49ers just went to a Super Bowl 2 years ago, and they're moving off the guy that got them there. So it's a what have you done for me lately business. I know
different team every year.
Different team. You're a top 5 pick. You're a national champion. You're a Heisman contender. Were you in college? Doesn't fucking matter. If you are the worst quarterback in your division, because obviously Josh Allen's great. If Cam Newton has a resurgence, or let's say the Patriots move up and grab a guy that ends up developing well, and
cough, Mac Jones,
cough, Mac Jones. The Jets, whatever happens with them, like it's a realistic possibility that a year from now, Tua is the worst quarterback in the division.
Totally
and you can't
possible.
let that stand. You can't let that stand. So. Now, speaking of, you mentioned the Dolphins' offensive line because they've been heavily tied to guys like Penei Sewell and Rashawn Slater. Why don't we get into this Brandon Thorn interview? If you don't know Brandon's work, he writes the Trench Warfare newsletter. He's an analyst with Establish the Run. He used to work with the Scouting Academy. One of the best offensive line analysts there are. Also works with Duke Manyweather over at O-Line Masterminds, who trains Lane Johnson, and Mekhi Becton was one of their guys coming out. I mean, the list of all pros that they train every single year is flabbergasting, and Brandon's a part of that coaching staff as well. So he really knows what he's talking about with offensive line, and we had a really good chat. It was about 45 minutes on some of the top prospects, both at tackle and at guard and at center in this class, and I think you guys are going to enjoy it. So why don't we roll with that? And we are very excited to have Brandon Thorn join us on the show this week to talk about a very, very loaded offensive line class this year. He is the author of the Trench Warfare newsletter, which I am a subscriber of, and I absolutely highly recommend it to everybody that cares anything about offensive line or defensive line play. He's arguably the best O-line analyst doing it to this day. It's phenomenal stuff. He runs Establish the Run as well. Like anything offensive line, Brandon Thorn's your guy, and we're excited to have him on here. He's been doing a lot of work on these draft prospects. And Brandon, just to kind of kick off this interview here, what's your thoughts overall on this offensive tackle class? Is it better than last year? And kind of historically speaking, where would you rank this tackle class overall?
Yeah, I'm looking over here at my board in my office just to kind of, get a lay of the land a little bit. But, last tackle class, I didn't watch it as extensively as I am for this class. So I didn't watch, every eligible guy like I am for this year, but I did watch a good portion of those top guys. And I think, generally, I think this class is deeper, at tackle. And, I just think that there's a lot of options in like the day 2 range, more so than last year. Maybe not quite as top heavy, but I don't know, man. I mean, I kind of do lean that it is pretty close to being as top heavy as well. So, it's just interesting obviously with COVID and everything. A lot of guys, some of these guys didn't play last year. The top 2 guys in many people's book didn't. A lot of these guys don't have as much experience as you typically want to see from offensive linemen. So it's going to be interesting to see how people, parse that and work through that and value that. But so that's kind of one of the downsides of a lot of these players, I think. But I mean, talent-wise and the film, when they were playing, I think is very good, man. I think there's a lot of starters in this class. So,
yeah, that variance in this class because of exactly what you talked about. Some guys playing, some guys not playing, no combine. The variance in pro day numbers that we're seeing really lends this class, I think, opinions to vary more on this class than in years past. That groupthink sort of sets in. Everybody sees them in the same place at the same time. They all have a few more snaps. This year, I don't know, are you finding that you feel like it's more all over the board? Because I certainly do.
Seems that way. Yeah, just being on Twitter and stuff, it seems like people are kind of all over the place with different guys, or at least they were. And now I think as we get closer, we'll see more probably groupthink. But yeah, I mean, I came into it fresh. I had never watched any of these guys, before I started the tape, really. I mean, I watched Sewell a little bit, prior last year, but I mean, I was pretty fresh on a lot of these guys. So I always love coming in that way, on any player. A lot of my opinions, I think, are pretty similar to some, but then I also have, I think, some that are different. So it's interesting. I mean, I'm sure we'll get into some of these guys, but I mean, there's so many guys to talk about, and I really feel like there's starters throughout the draft.
Well, you just mentioned Sewell, and there's been kind of a debate that was sparked a long time ago now with Daniel Jeremiah putting Rashawn Slater as his OT1. I know he's one of Duke Manyweather's guys, but I think Duke genuinely believes he's OT1 as well, because he's worked with him, he's seen him move and everything like that. And I think there's been more and more people that have seen his technical refinement combined with his athleticism, the fact that he's a five-tool guy. He could play literally every position on the line. And then you compare that to Sewell, who I think athletically is just absolutely freaky. Not as technically refined as Slater, but it's kind of projection versus somebody that you feel good about day one. Where do you see the debate of Penei Sewell versus Rashawn Slater, and are both of them worth top 10 picks to you?
So I see it as Sewell being a guy that he's just special. Slater, I mean, he's special in a different way, kind of like how you're saying. I mean, just as high of a floor as a guy can probably have. I think Slater is right there. In terms of a guy, like you said, who can just come in right away, play multiple positions if you need him to. But ideally, I'm always a big fan of guy, just, you put him at a position you want him to be at long term and you feel good about. And the more I think about Slater, the more I can see like just an incredible guard. But yeah, I totally get, keeping him at tackle, like Isaiah Wynn and guys like that, who maybe, a little smaller. They look more like a guard in terms of their frame and their build. But, their tape is really good at tackle, so might as well try him there. But I don't know. I mean, so the more I get into this process and, kind of go back on some of his tape, I may even move him to guard and just kind of have him projected there. I'm not sure, though. So, but yeah, I mean, I'll start with Slater. Like his footwork, weight distribution, balance, his ability to recover from compromising positions is excellent. And all those things, I just think translate very well to the pro game. And also he recognizes things very quickly. He's very rarely caught off guard. But then when he is, he's able to recover. Really good hands as well. He's just efficient, and then for him to come and just do what he did at his pro day, that speaks to me like he's really a pro. He's preparing the way he should. And by all regards, all things that I've heard, he really is like a pro already. So yeah, I think he's just, a guy who, top 10 might be a little rich for me. But I wouldn't, bat an eye if that happens and think it's, a bad value necessarily, but I feel better in like mid first kind of range. And Sewell for me, man, I mean, he is, I just think when you look at his age and his athletic ability with his size, and then on top of all that, I've said this on other shows and everything, is his mental processing is outstanding. I just think, if you watch him in 2018, early in the year, he was 17 years old, and you watch the tape and the things that he was doing, just truly rare stuff. So I just think I'm not a huge upside guy, but his upside truly is outrageous, just limitless. But then I also think he's ready to go pretty much right away and play, and might have some growing pains in terms of technique and stuff like that. But I really liked his hand placement. I thought he was able to quickly latch into the armpit, inside shoulder area of defenders and pass protection, especially creates leverage very quickly. I saw him use different pass sets and hand techniques to keep rushers guessing. I think there's a little more nuance to his game at the same time than people are giving him credit for. I just think, the age, maybe some maturity stuff I've heard, may need to get ironed out with time. But I mean, he's a great, worker, football character, leader, all that kind of stuff. People rave about him. I've gotten to talk to coaches there extensively and watch tape with them and stuff like that about, and go through stuff in terms of what he's seeing and what he's prepared for and stuff like that. And he's just so impressive. So to me, it's hard to put a guy like Slater, who we talked about, over a guy like Sewell. I just think, when you're evaluating these guys of what they can be, and plus what I think he'll be early, I just think Sewell, is kind of the no-brainer top guy in my opinion.
Plus, if your offense has a lot of screens built in, I don't know if I've ever seen a tackle move better in space on screen passes and just absolutely demolish DBs. Not even just being able to locate and lock in on them, but finish DBs in space. It's
Trent Williams
special. Yes, exactly. And Trent, again, he was a similarly freaky athlete. I can't remember what age he came out, but I think he was 21. He might have only been a year older than Penei coming out. But
I really hope Penei Sewell does his pro day. I've actually heard from a couple people now that he might not do it.
I've heard that too.
That'd be so disappointing. I really hope he comes out and just crushes it. Being out of football for a year, I don't think there's any reason you shouldn't do your pro day, man. I mean, I feel like it's part of the process, and so we'll see. But I hope he does it.
Now, OT2 in your rankings is a guy that I've done extensive work on. You actually have him above Slater strictly as a tackle, and that's Teven Jenkins from Oklahoma State. You just did recently a film room with him where you broke down it was 20-25 plays with him and kind of went through his thought process on these plays, techniques he was using. And the thing that jumps out to me is we know he's big, we know he's strong, he's built and plays like a Brian Balaga type tackle where it's like, I'm going to give you my chest. There's nothing you can do about it. Go ahead, try to convert speed to power. I'm just going to anchor against you anyway. But how he uses his hands, how he reads rushers mid-rep, how he's able to process fronts before the snap and know what's coming to him, being able to identify twists based on hey, that A gap's open. I know they're going to be slanting, which means they're bringing this linebacker in the C gap. That's my dude. He's really, really smart, really, really technically developed. And then you just throw in on top of that he plays like an asshole. I feel like every offensive line coach in the league would absolutely love him.
Yeah, man. I you basically almost just kind of read my scouting report on him in a lot of ways. For positives, one of the things in a line in my report, I have commanding grip strength, and he puts defenders in a cage once he's latched onto their frame. I mean, that ability to do that, as consistently as he does, I think is pretty special. And of course, his finishing ability is consistent, and he's taking guys out of the screen consistently. And I think he has above average agility, foot quickness, and burst. Not elite, maybe not very good, but I did see above average there. So I think maybe that's getting, knocked on him a little too much. I guess the length thing might be an issue. I've heard 33 and change at Exos. I've heard 32 and change prior to 2020 from scouts. So, if he's 33 plus, tackle all day. If he's under 33, I can understand, okay, put him at guard. I think with his hands and his ability to process, I think he'll be fine at guard. I think those are two things that I always look at for tackles if you want to convert them to guard. I feel like they need to have good hands, and they have to be able to process things quickly just because the speed of the game obviously increases the further inside you go. So I think he has that. So he can certainly play guard, I think, and be probably just as high of a rated prospect to me. But yeah, I think most likely stick him at tackle for sure, right tackle. He's played left. He played guard a couple. I think he has 2 starts at guard in his career, in right guard. But yeah, I think he could become a little bit predictable using that snatch trap technique. Maybe learn to pick his spots a little bit better. But that type of stuff comes with time. It's just great to see him, using all these different types of techniques to unlock pass rushers when they get inside of his frame, or he can just absorb it and anchor down, like you said. But yeah, man, I mean, just the power, the competitive toughness, the use of hands, and then the above average foot quickness stuff. To me, he kind of reminded me of Jedrick Wills. Maybe not as athletic, but I certainly see the similar type of player stylistically, and the power, man, is reminiscent.
Yeah, that was the thing that stood out to Jenkins, and the first reason I pointed him out to Brett when I watched him a little bit earlier than Brett did, and it was that hand strength and rotational power. It was the argument of the old, Dante Scarnecchia argument. I don't care if you're long or I don't care if you're quick. You got to get there either way. And with Jenkins, once he gets that arm out, again, he puts himself in good spots mentally. Once he gets that arm out, gets a hand on you, especially both hands on you, it's over, right? He's turning you, he's putting you on the ground. And you see that, like you said, I love what you said about consistently, right? His finish shows up consistently. It's not something he does once a game or every couple of games. That is something you see on his tape over and over again. And I got into it with another analyst who said, oh, he's a guard. And I was like, really? I mean, same as you, I can see why you would say that. Maybe a little bit of the overrating on, he's not super fluid, super quick, but he's quick enough to get himself in the right spots. And I'm like, with that kind of technique, that kind of processing, that kind of power, why would you not put him at the premier spot? And if that doesn't work, yeah, you can slide him inside. And I too think he'll be okay. That's not always a perfect switch, but start him in tackle. Like I see him as a tackle, right? And yeah, and I was just surprised that somebody was like, nope, guard. And I was like, might want to go back and think about that. It's a different way to get it done, but he gets it done.
Yeah, he does. I mean, if you have under 33-inch arms, legit, I can't think of a tackle in the NFL who's succeeding with that. Now, not that there can't be anomalies.
The last one might have been Anthony Munoz, like 30 years ago.
Different game.
Yeah.
The last one I can think of.
That's why I mentioned the guard thing. If sure. I didn't hear about that, I wouldn't have ever thought about guard. But, so we'll see. But, man, based on tape, I definitely think right tackle is a good fit for him.
Now, continuing with the tackle class, I can't remember exactly where you had Darrisaw ranked in your tackles. I know you saw some things you really liked about him and some things that I don't want to say are red flags, but things that could be cleaned up. First question, do you see him as a left or a right? And secondly, what kind of system and what kind of coaching staff, because I think that's also important for young prospects, they got to be with the right coach. What kind of staff and system do you think is best for Christian Darrisaw to get the most out of his career?
Yeah, so Darrisaw and Slater and Jenkins are all somewhat close to me. I have an 8.5 on Jenkins, 8.4 on Slater, 8.2 on Darrisaw, according to the scale that we use for Bleacher Report. So all first round picks, that's how I would slot them. And in terms of sheer talent and physical traits, I think Darrisaw has an argument to be, tackle 1 or 2 for sure. I think his talent when you're watching him on tape is pretty undeniable. It's very easy to see. Just his frame, his build, the way he moves out of his stance, his quickness, his natural power. And, he's pretty overwhelming at the point of attack. So I think all that stuff's pretty obvious when you watch him. I think he works off threats pretty well too. When he's, uncovered and covered, So, I think he has that aspect of his game as well. He's very comfortable on an island, just reading off my notes here. And, I think he has the patience and the confidence to not bite on a lot of stutters and hesitations. Not that he had a ton of opportunity to be on an island at Virginia Tech, but I think in those reps when he looked really good there. And, they run a heavy zone scheme, and, he excelled at it. So I think in terms of his pro projection for scheme-wise, I think he's scheme versatile. I don't really think it matters what scheme he goes to, but in terms of the offensive line room, the situation, the people he's around, and the coaching he receives, I think all that's very important for him. Ideally, you just want him to go to an offensive line coach that has a history of developing players. Obviously Bill Callahan and Mike Munchak are the gold standard right now. So, either one of those situations obviously would be great. Obviously in Cleveland, he couldn't play tackle right now, so that's probably not going to happen. Denver, I guess, is a possibility. You're right. And then there's other really good offensive line coaches out there as well. John Matsko is really good in Washington. Aaron Kromer got let go by the Rams, but he's always been a great offensive line coach. I'm not sure what's going to happen with him. So there's a few others. There's like 10 or so, like 8 to 10 guys who, if you look at their track record, guys have consistently performed or excelled under their tutelage. You know what I mean? So situations like that where somebody's proven, I think will be really good. And the reason I say that is because, on his tape, I think he plays down to competition. And, he'll show up when the lights are on, and, he has a really good player across from him for sure. And he has the ability to do that. But it is kind of a red flag for me when, if you watch him against Liberty, that was concerning to me. I would expect a guy of his talent to go play Liberty and dominate. He did not dominate at all. He actually got, stood up, and guys got into his frame a lot. He just looked kind of careless, just going through the motions a lot. And, that's just kind of concerning for offensive line in particular. Maybe as a pro, it won't matter. And, because every guy he's going to face is good, it won't matter. He'll never have the opportunity to play down to competition. That's certainly possible. But, the competitive toughness factor on the field, consistently finishing, consistently maximizing what you can do. I didn't see that in every tape. Duke as well is another tape where you can kind of see that. He relies on his upper body strength a little too much just because he can. That's kind of a common thing, though, I see in prospects. If they're bigger and stronger than you, they're just going to do that. They're not going to always bring their feet and really, generate power from the ground. A lot of the time, they're just going to get, just use their upper body to move you, and he does that a lot. So, maybe just clean up some stuff there technically, but, and then the play down to competition thing. Those are the two or three things why I have him below those other guys. But I can certainly see him being a very good pro for a long time if those things go out the window, which they can.
EJ, I don't know if you watched the Miami game, but did you watch him against Roche? Where I don't think Roche got literally anything the whole game on him. He just got swallowed.
Probably his best tape.
Yeah, and a perfect example of what Brandon's talking about. Miami has 3 guys at edge that are going in this draft, and Darrisaw knows that. I mean, these guys they're young, but they're not clueless. They're fully aware that every scout is going to watch that tape for both sides of the ball. And it is interesting because one of the things over the years as I've watched offensive line, and it's one of the more challenging positions for me. And as I've grown and listened to guys like you and lots of other people, one of the things that I've come to appreciate is that consistency, and it's consistency when the lights are on and when they're not, right? Are you always doing the same thing? And can you demonstrate it week in and week out? And a long time ago, somebody told me the best offensive line prospects are boring, right? They're boring in a good way, right? You never see the bad things happen. I go back to Cody Whitehair's tape, right? I watched 3 tapes of Cody Whitehair, probably, what is that, like 145 snaps or something. And I saw one guy tilt him, and everything else was the exact same. 2 steps, drop, absorb contact, 1 more step, end of rep. And you watch that, it's like paint drying. But when I got to, where Whitehair was going to go, I was like, I'm comfortable with him going just about anywhere. You know exactly what you're going to get. And it's when you see that variance, especially in a younger player, I like that you said it doesn't have to stay, right? It can go. Those are things that can get drilled out of him with a good coach. But it is one of those things that sort of pictures of it's like, man, he had a great game here. He had a kind of down game here. And again, right, when it's that sort of variance of competition against Liberty, you're like, okay, did you just think you could just muscle them all day? And maybe it didn't work out for you.
Right. Yeah.
So Liberty's got some dudes.
One at quarterback who you love, but we're not talking about
that. There's a freaky athlete. Speaking of freaky athlete, that's coming out in this class from Bama. Surprise, surprise! Bama recruits freaks. Alex Leatherwood, who, when you look at his pro day numbers, especially the jumps, 34.5. On the vert, he's got 34 plus inch arms, running sub 4.9 in the 40. Like, that is almost identical to what Trent did in the combine in 2000. Trent was a little bit faster in the 40, but everything else, height, weight, frame, jumps, almost identical. And when you watch him on tape, I mean, his first step out of his stance is ridiculous.
Yeah.
But at the same time, as you've pointed out, everything after that first step can kind of go haywire on him. What are your concerns about Leatherwood, and are they fixable enough that you're willing to gamble on the athlete in the first round and just see what happens?
I'm not comfortable in the first round on him, even with the testing and stuff like that. I mean, I'll give him a slight bump probably because of the testing, but not a whole lot. I mean, very, very small, just because I saw a lot of, the testing on tape, maybe not to quite that degree, but I saw, really explosive, twitched up dude on tape. So, as far as concerns, I think, you touched on it. After he gets out of his stance, he has a tendency to overset guys, and that just opens up the inside, for inside counters, or he'll underset guys and throw that outside hand and be really heavy with it. And it's just basically bait for a cross chop technique. And I feel like almost every loss he had I've watched like 7 games of him. Almost every single loss was either oversetting, getting beat inside, or by a cross chop to his outside hand. And in the pros, the cross chop, obviously is, I think, the most commonly used pass rush move right now. I think if you watch NFL tape, you're going to see the cross chop 5-6 times in any tape you watch by, assortment of different players, obviously to varying degrees of success, but a lot of guys are very good with that move. So for him to have that bad habit in his game, I think is pretty concerning, because I think it could get really exposed in the pro game. So he has a lot to clean up in that regard. Obviously the physical stuff is really special. I think as a run blocker all around, he's very good. Creating movement at the point of attack, displacing defenders, comboing and climbing, pulling and leading around the edge. He can do all that stuff. Play strength, initial explosiveness, heavy hands, that's certainly there. I gave him a comp to a guy like Michael Orr. I think that Michael Orr was such a stud run blocker and, average to below average in pass protection. That's kind of what I see for Leatherwood. There's potential to be more than Orr was, for sure, because of, his physical gifts. But that's kind of the playing style that I saw, and how it can translate to the pro game. And I gave him I'm like round 2 on him.
Interesting. I'm going to dig just a little deeper on Leatherwood and ask you a question we talked about, a previous prospect. What do you think of him at guard for the 2 reasons that you talked about? He's a dominating run blocker, and he's got that initial quick twitch. Nobody's arguing that first move is lightning, and his ability in space to kind of have that work against him, right? Everybody talks about speed and mental processing, and when they don't go together, speed just gets you to the wrong place faster. And if he was at guard in a phone booth, do you think that he could maximize those 2 things, the initial quickness and the run blocking prowess, which is pretty obvious on tape?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's possible. The only concern I would have there is his hands. I think interior wise, with the skill that's inside there, not just from defensive tackles, but from guys moving inside as well. Your hands, I think, as a guard, have to be really precise, or else, a quick loss on the inside is worse than a quick loss on the outside. And, so that's my only concern with guard is his hands. But in terms of everything else you said, for sure matches up well with the transition inside. But I think the hands thing is probably the main reason why I didn't project him at guard. But I could totally understand that. I don't think it's crazy. So, but yeah, that would be my one concern with the move to guard.
All right, mark that down, Brandon. You said I'm not crazy. That's one for me.
Not to get too much on a tangent, but this is something that I've noticed over many, many drafts where people's like, well, if he doesn't work at tackle, he can go work at guard. And it's like, if he doesn't work at tackle, like it still doesn't mean he's automatically people assume like, oh, he didn't work at tackle because he's got bad feet. It's like you can not work at tackle for a lot of reasons. Hands is one of the biggest one. And going inside to guard where everything happens faster. And to be honest, I consider it harder to fit and then constantly refit with Akeem Hicks grabbing your wrist and everything like that than it is to try to fit and refit against a guy like, Kayvon Chason, who's, 235 pounds. Like, it's hard to play guard. And not to mention, like you said, the quickest way to the quarterback is a straight line. It's not an automatic transition. And to have a guy that can play both, like say Teven or Slater or anything like that, that's more of a rarity than I think people know about. And so I'm glad you brought that up earlier. Like, it's not a guarantee that he can do it, because it's a totally different skill set and one that I think people don't respect enough. And that is kind of a good transition into this guard class, where there is a guy at the top of your rankings, Elijah Vera-Tucker from USC, who has played both. He's played tackle and he's played guard. Why don't you talk a little bit about him? Do you see him as more of a guard or a tackle? And if you do see him as guard, beyond him, are there any other guards that you're really excited about?
So yeah, not Dickerson. Dickerson's actually my number 2 guy in the whole draft, not counting medical, but Vera-Tucker is my number 3 overall offensive lineman in the draft. And I see him as a guard. So, with him, man, I think his weight distribution and how well he's able to stay centered and, his center of gravity, his balance, those type of things, he's always in control. He's very fluid. And for a guy with his, wide power base, his build, his frame to play that way, I think is really, really impressive. And I really like his hands as well. I think he's much more of a grabber than, like a puncher. And inside, I think that works very well. He's really able to generate leverage quickly on guys. So I think that's important. And he drops his hips well to anchor. A lot of posterior strength in his body to really stifle the bull rush. He's aggressive and physical on a snap-to-snap basis. He's very efficient climbing to the second level. He has that girth and grip strength, square power on the move to erase guys. I really liked his tape, at both tackle and guard, really. But I just think his skill set and physical dimensions are, a easier transition inside. There's some issues. I mean, obviously the Oregon game, everyone talks about it. He was reportedly hurt in that game, hamstring, didn't practice that week. That has to be taken into account. But at the same time, Kayvon Thibodeau is an absolute freak. So he was up and down in that game for sure. But that's not the main reason why I see him being a guard. It's more so what I think he can do inside than what he can do at tackle, more so. I think one thing that I saw, this is, it sounds like a nitpick, but I think on angle drive blocks, when he's kicking out on wide zone, he has a tendency to, lean into blocks, and it caused his pads to rise and his base to narrow. And, so he, maybe that one specific area as a run blocker in, a guard or tackle is going to give him some issues. I think he can get that cleaned up. That's not like a detriment to his projection, I don't think. It was tough to find negatives on his tape, for sure, 2019 included. And he only has 20 starts. And, to be as polished as he is, with being that inexperienced, that really kind of sold me on him. And then he's pretty young as well. I think he's going to turn 22 in June. So, I saw a lot of Joel Bentonio in his game, tackle guard, that type of thing.
That's a good comp. Yeah.
Stylistically, he reminded me of Joel Bentonio. So I'm very high on him. And in terms of other guards that I'm very excited about, none to his degree. I mean, it's a pretty steep drop off after him. But like round 2 and 3, I like Wyatt Davis, in that range, Aaron Banks, Deontay Brown. I have Jackson Carman as a guard, Trey Smith. I mean, that's when you've been Cleveland. That's when you start getting into all those type of names. So, but in terms of first round, he's the only guy for me.
Yeah. Going back to what you said about Vera-Tucker and the discussion we just had about guard tackle, one of my favorite things you've said is it's more about the plus at guard than the minus at tackle. I have him here not because he couldn't do this and I'm sliding him over, but because I really think his traits and his game translate well to this spot. Reminds me very much of the sort of safety corner debate that's gone on for years. If he can't play corner, we'll just kick him into safety. And I'm like, it's not the same thing. So,
right.
I do want to kind of touch on, you mentioned, okay, he might be the only guard that goes in round 1. In total, between Sewell, Slater, Jenkins, Darrisaw, Vera-Tucker, Dickerson, you have an astronomical grade on. I think you had him as like one of your top 10 players overall on the Bleacher Report board. He was like 6 or something like that. I mean, you love Dickerson, so I'm assuming you want him as a first round pick. Maybe Creed. Are we looking at beating last year's total of 7 offensive linemen in the first round? Do you think we can get as high as it was back in 2013 where they had 9 offensive linemen in the first round?
I mean, it's possible. I mean, Sam Cosmi, Alex Leatherwood, those guys could sneak in there. I mean, I've heard Dylan Raduns from North Dakota State's a possibility. I'm not nearly as high on him, but I mean, it's possible, man. I would probably guess it would be like 6 or 7. But I think rounds 2 and 3 are going to be just loaded with offensive linemen. I don't know what the record is there, but I think that this probably is going to get close to that. It's just going to depend on how the end of the first goes, like how many guys are going to sneak in there. Some of those names I mentioned, I have most of those guys in the 2nd and 3rd round range. And like with the Dickerson thing, that's obviously not accounting medical. I don't factor that into any evaluation. So, and that's the distinction there. That's my evaluation of him. That's not necessarily my valuation of him. In terms of valuing him, if I was drafting, I wouldn't draft him, top 10 because of the medical, but I don't know necessarily how to knock that or to incorporate that into his evaluation. I'm looking at his tape, that's like 95% of it. And then, I talk to coaches, players, trainers, people that are around them, if I can, and just kind of get a feel for how they are, how they are in the locker room, teammate, worker, that kind of stuff. And for him, I mean, I think it's pretty obvious. He's, off the field as clean as you could possibly get, intangibles through the roof. And his tape to me was absolutely dominant. So yeah, I mean, if you're dominating SEC competition like that, and you're 6'6", 330, it's tough not to love that guy. But if I was valuing him, probably a day 2 guy, because 4 season-ending injuries is it is what it is. You can't really overlook that if you're trying to value him. If that makes sense.
Do you see him as a center, or is he a center or a guard to you, or both?
Both. Yeah, definitely both. Yeah. I could definitely see him play guard. He played the 2020 Tennessee game. He had to bump over to left guard and played. So I got to see him there. Looked the same as far as do all the same stuff that he was doing at center. So I could definitely see him playing both. I could see him, some teams liking him more at guard too, just because his size and stuff. But I definitely think he could do both. And, in the film room that I did with him, I think if people watch that, they'll see somebody whose processing is really, really good. His ability to adjust on the fly and do things mid-play that, the scheme necessarily doesn't have drawn out or isn't accounting for, his ability to ad lib and to, plug gaps that are there that he sees post snap. I mean, that type of stuff, when you're able to do that and on top of being physically dominant, that's why I like him so much, because I think the mental side of it he has as well. So, the only thing you can really say about him, I think, on tape is, above average athlete, maybe. So he's not going to be, he's not Jason Kelsey, Garrett Bradbury, any of those type of guys who's flying out and, cutting off, backside linebackers on outside zone uncovered and stuff like that. But if he gets to the second level, I think he's pretty efficient, and he's obviously dominant when he gets there.
Yeah, he's also got 3 inches and 30 pounds on all those guys too. So
Yeah,
it's a different kind of. It's almost like a Mangold type frame where it's just a mountain in the middle of the offensive line. But this was awesome, Brandon. Thank you again for coming on. I'm going to throw the links to those film rooms you were referencing, because I've seen them and they're all phenomenal, especially being able to talk to the players in real time and kind of get their thought process on their film. There's nobody else in draft media doing that right now to the level that you're doing it. It's phenomenal stuff. So I'm going to throw the link to that, the Trench Warfare newsletter, everything that you do is great. Hopefully our audience will check it out. They'll follow you. They'll learn a lot more about offensive line prospects than we could ever teach them. So thank you again for coming on. And with that, EJ, let's get back to the rest of the show. This week's episode is sponsored by Purple Mattress. Purple Mattress has been the most innovative sleep system on the market for over 15 years now, and it's all because of their own unique patented technology, the Purple Grid. The Purple Grid has over 1,800 open air channels that keep you cool and comfortable throughout the night, and they're highly flexible to relieve pressure on your body, no matter your size and no matter how you sleep. I can tell you from experience, having felt that grid myself when they sent me and EJ samples, that it's an extremely cool design. The vertical channels don't look like they can support weight, but then you feel it and you kind of understand how the physics works. It doesn't look structurally sound, but trust me, it is. And it's really, really cool technology. And it's also not hot at all because of all those channels. So it's really comfortable, especially in those hot summer months. I personally love it. It's a really, really great mattress. And in fact, Purple is so confident in their mattress that every single order comes with a 100-night risk-free trial. And every single mattress also ships for free and is delivered right to your door. And at the end of your trial, if you're not completely satisfied, they'll come pick it up at no cost to you. So if you want to try it out for yourself, go to purple.com/bootleg10 and use promo code bootleg10. And for a limited time with that code, you'll get 10% off of any Purple mattress order of $200 or more. Again, that is purple.com/bootleg10, promo code bootleg10 for 10% off of any order of $200 or more. Terms and conditions, of course, apply. And with that being said, EJ, why don't we move on to kind of a fun segment that took us longer to put together than we thought it would, because there was so many names to pick from. And that is some of our favorite disruptors along the defensive line in this class. And we only had one rule when we put this together, was didn't really matter what position. It just had to be guys that we hadn't talked about yet. So we were really kind of diving deep into day 2 and day 3 with some of these names, but it was a really fun exercise because it kind of almost gave me perspective that this is a better defensive line class than I thought it was. Again, it's not as top heavy at the top as maybe some past years, but the depth and the excitement and the potential of some of these down the line guys, I think is as good as ever.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's been one of the things about this draft class. People have been bagging on the edge class in general and the defensive line class in general and saying, it's just, there's a couple of stars at the top and there's not that star power. We've talked about that. There's no Bosa, there's no Watt at the top of this. That's sort of that number one. There's no Chase Young that everybody's saying, oh, he's going top 5 for sure. But when you get past that, when you scrape off that veneer that we've had for a good 2, 3, 4, 5 years in a row, there's a lot of players here who can contribute. They may not be the guy that you're just going to plug and play 1A alpha and he's going to go get double-digit sacks. That's true, but there's a lot of guys with varied skill sets. And why did we use the term disruptor? Because look, in the modern NFL, Sacks are nice to have. It's a finish for sure, but pressures are the must-have. Pressures are the measure in the modern NFL of did you disrupt the opposing offense's passing play or not? And passing drives the modern NFL. So pressures are the thing. You need people who can create pressures, and pressures can come from anywhere in the front seven. They can come from defensive tackles, ideally from the inside. That's great. Inside pressure really throws quarterbacks off their rhythm, but they can come from all over the front seven. So for our purposes, we're really going to concentrate on the front seven, the defensive line. Now, I sort of slice that into defensive tackles, defensive ends, who are those bigger sort of 5-tech guys or 4-3 defensive ends, and then the true edge players, the outside linebackers, your classic pass rushers, right? But in going through this, I actually didn't pick any of those guys. I didn't pick any of the sort of edge or wing players, largely because we talked about a couple of them on defensive gems, and some of my favorite defensive tackles we talked about on defensive gems too. So it was a great opportunity to dig deeper into that defensive tackle class, the defensive end class, and look at some of these varied skill sets and see guys who maybe don't fit the sort of prototype mold, but who are really, really fun. So we're both going to pick 3 players and then a sleeper or 2. The first one that I wanted to pick is just pure chalk, and I wanted a defensive tackle, and I wanted a disruptor. I wanted not just a run stuffer. I was watching Davion Nixon this weekend, and he's got some of that. He's a pure power guy, but he's really a guy, classic Iowa nose tackle. He's going to plug it up. I wanted somebody who could do a little bit of both. And as I watched more and more, I was like, you're just trying to not pick Christian Barmore. You should just pick Christian Barmore because he is something else. And when he declared, it kind of reshifted the entire tackle look at this draft. We talked about that during the Defensive Gems episode when we were talking about Tommy Togiai and why nobody was talking about him. It really, when Barmore declared, it was like, well, Barmore's DT1. This guy is 6'5", 310, and a redshirt sophomore. He is first-year draft eligible player, which means 3 years out of high school. 6'5", 310. Physically dominant in every way. He's got strength, power, size, and quickness, which at his size, at his physical size, is ridiculous. And as you watch this class and you go back and watch Barmore, you think, okay, I haven't seen that. Like, I haven't seen that combination of size, quickness, and power. Nobody else has it. That's why he's DT1. He can create pressure from the interior. Very few guys, and I mean very few guys in the NFL, match up one-on-one with him. If you're not double teaming him, you're in trouble because he can win, again, with strength, with quickness, with movement skills, with raw power, just bumping you out of the way. And one of the things I like best about Christian Barmore, besides the obvious physical skills, is he played huge down the stretch. When the lights were the brightest in the national championship chase for Alabama, if you watched those games versus Notre Dame, he had 5 tackles, 4 of them solo, a sack, and a tackle for loss. He blew up multiple plays for the Irish. It just, again,
that's a good offensive line too.
Yeah. 3-4 of those guys are going to get drafted, right? And he just made life hell for them. They couldn't run through the middle. He would burst through the middle and chase guys to the edge again because he's not limited with speed. A lot of the classic bigger interior players, I'm thinking about like Jerron Reed right now. Jerron Reed had a very good first year with creating pressures, but he was not a threat to get to the edge. You weren't getting by him. He's an ultimate two-gapper, but he didn't have the range of a guy like Barmore. So, he did that versus Notre Dame, and Alabama pretty much thoroughly outclassed Notre Dame. Then they went on to OSU, again, has 5 tackles, Alabama's only sack versus OSU, and just blew up plays for them left and right. The ESPN commentating team in that game was like, it's that man again. Like they said that like 3 times. Guess who it is? It's that man again. It's Christian Barmore. And again, that is you're chasing for the national championship. You're playing in games that really matter. Everybody's watching that game and is gonna watch that game a billion times. If you're in the scouting game, there's 15, 20 guys in that game that are going to get drafted in this draft. Easy. He knows everybody's watching, and he just dominated. He raised his level of play and just played tremendously good football. So while Barmore seems like the ultimate chalk choice for this list, it was very hard to get away from his name. I was looking for this guy does this thing better. This guy does this thing, but they're not better than Christian Barmore. They're just not.
In terms of overall package, yeah, I would agree with that. Like, I think Levi, I would argue Levi's ceiling is up there, but in terms of like day one, what are you getting day one? Yeah, Christian Barmore's that dude in this class. I don't think there's an argument otherwise.
Plus, I couldn't pick Levi because you already picked him in 10 gems. So
and I'm a Levi apologist. I always have been and I always will be, because I think back to, because I remember 2018. I think it was his first year where he got significant playing time, and that's where I remember first seeing him, and I was like, "Who the hell is that dude?" And he wasn't eligible yet, so I didn't really go back and watch him. And then he opted out for 2020, and I kind of got reintroduced to him at the Senior Bowl, and he shows up day one and just starts kicking ass. I was like, "Yeah, I remember that kid. He was amazing, and I think he's still going to be amazing." But
there's a lot of that this year. There's a lot of guys that I'm like, did they play in 2020? And I look back and no, they opted out. And I go back to their 2019 tape and I'm like, oh yeah, I remember this.
Yeah. Half of Michigan's roster, it seemed like, opted out, but not that I blame them. My number one guy, speaking of Michigan, by the way, is Kwity Paye, who I guess you can call him a defensive end, but he also played a lot of tackle for them. I mean, they moved him all over the place. He measured in his pro day at 6'2", 260, and still put up 36 on the bench. 33-inch arms, not super long, but okay. But 35 and a half, I think, vert, 4.5 in the 40. Like, the dude's an absolute freak of nature. And so you wonder, it's like, how do they have a 260-pound guy playing, DT, like playing 3-tech on like a lot of snaps? And it's like, well, because he's really freaking strong and really explosive, and he's one of those dudes where it doesn't really matter where he plays. He's going to be more athletic than the guy in front of him. And when I try to, figure out how to project him, I'm like, he's not really like a lot of other players. He's got some Everson Griffin to him. He's got some Michael Bennett to him. Like, there's no real good comp for Kwity Paye. And I mean that in a very positive manner, because he's so athletic, so explosive, so powerful. He plays his ass off. Like, his motor's great. And, clearly he's versatile enough that you can kind of move him all over the front and be totally fine. I almost want him to go to, God, what would be like a Patriots or a Dolphins style defense, where it's like, hey, we're going to throw a bunch of guys at you from different angles, and we're going to line them up in 5 different spots over the course of this game. Go figure it out. Like, he's the kind of guy, like what the Patriots did with Uche, where it's, Uche was playing Mike. He was, playing edge. They lined him up inside. Like, they did everything with Uche, and they did everything with Kwity. And the Patriots are going to end up using Uche in that way. And I think the Dolphins could use Kwity in that way, where he's just that movable, ass-kicking chess piece that it doesn't matter, where you put him, he's going to be successful. I'm a big fan of Kwity Paye. I have him as my, well, I shouldn't say I have him as my edge two, because I'm trying to decide between him and Ronnie Perkins, but Ronnie Perkins and him are 2 totally different players and 2 totally different play styles, so it's a little bit hard to compare. But the only guy that I absolutely for sure have over Kwity Paye is Jalen Phillips, and you know how much I love Jalen Phillips, so that tells you how much I love Kwity Paye. I think he's an easy first-round pick, probably a top 20 pick, and I wouldn't be surprised to see him go as high as like 14 to the Vikings. I could very easily see that.
Yeah, I agree with you on the sort of top 20 projection, and put him in a lineup and figure it out. There's spots where he would be better and spots where he would be not as good, but he's going to be good wherever he goes just because of his tools, his motor. He's got skills. If he gets with a coaching staff that has a plan for him, he's going to be successful. I could see him be very successful. You mentioned the sort of Patriots tree defenses. I could see him be very successful in a place like Pittsburgh. I could see him be very successful as like
as an OLB, you think? I mean, he's athletic enough for it. Like,
yeah, they tend to like their guys taller, like Bud Dupree, right?
Yeah.
But again, Kwity Paye is compact, explosive, powerful. I could see them doing some good things with him. I could see him as like the Leo, in the Hawks defense, right?
Yeah, behind Dunlap.
That's absolutely a role I could project him into very easily, but I could project him into almost any defense because he's a top 20 pick, and you could find a role for him because he is physically dominant. I know a lot of people are out there going, well, Barmore and Kwity Paye, woo, why'd I tune in? Like, that's chalk. Those guys are, trust me, the list is going to get more interesting, but you hit on a really interesting point about a couple of years ago, I went to sort of defensive line and edge. And then I quickly realized that defensive line wasn't specific enough. And I split it into defensive tackle, defensive end, and edge. And there's still a ton of overlap. And we're going to get into some players that kind of blur that line. Quity's one of them that, it's like, well, is he this or is he this? Would you play him at this tack or would you play him outside? Like, he has the movement skills to play outside, but on obvious passing downs or dime downs, you could slide that guy into 3. Because he's explosive.
Which is what Michigan did.
Absolutely.
They put him in at 3 all the time because even if he's taking on a guard one-on-one, he was so powerful. And he had this kind of like really low stance where, his butt was like,
he's built like a fire plug for sure.
Yeah. And he would just get up and under, and he's so strong. Again, like 35 or 36 inch vert, 36 on the bench as well. He's a solid 260. It's like running into a tree stump. So it's like, is he powerful enough to anchor against like a double team coming at him from the side? Probably not. But if he's just taking on a guard one-on-one as a 3, he's too strong for most guards to handle. So yeah, you can play him inside, even though he's 6'2", 260, which is typical edge dimensions. It's like if God, he's built like Shaq Barrett, but thicker, stronger, and more explosive, which should terrify people because generally you just have this explosive human square running at you, and there's nothing you could do about it.
He does look a little bit like a Minecraft character. He's built out of blocks. But so I had divided it into just D-line and edge, and then I went to DT, defensive end, and edge. And I felt bad about that until I looked up one of the sites, NFL Draft Bible, who one of our friends, Mark Jarvis, is working with this year. They have 7 different categories. They have nose guard, defensive tackle, 4-3 DE, 3-4 DE, 3-4 OLB, 4-3 OLB. Like they have every slice. And I think that might be a little bit too much, whereas mine was a little bit too few, but it's just to sort of hammer home the point that these guys have all different body types. Different teams play them in different ways. They play light guys inside. They play heavy guys outside. Small, fast guys to beat guards with quickness. It's just all over the board. You see some huge guys outside playing OLB, and then you see tiny guys who are like 240 on a good day, rushing the passer off the outside. So there's just a tremendous range from guys like Tyler Shelvin, who's the nose guard for LSU, who's like 365 generously. I think he's probably more like 375, just a massive human being.
Coach O called him out for being 3. So Coach O said he was 375 at his heaviest.
Coach O is not a light guy himself, so he's got some sensitivity to that, but
incomprehensibly heavy.
Yeah, so that guy is like the block in the middle, and then you're going down to guys who are as light as 235 or 240 on the outside, and they're kind of all getting run together. So that was one of the things that made these choices really difficult. But my second choice wasn't all that difficult. It's a guy I really wanted to talk about. We hadn't talked about him yet. And that is Carlos Boogie Basham Jr. out of Wake Forest. 6'3", 281. So more of a classic 5-tech size, 4'3" DE size, which is the way Wake Forest played him. He's a redshirt senior, so he's a 5-year player at Wake Forest. Plays with violence. He is one of the guys that when he gets a hold of you, you'll know it. He got Daniel Jones in the game against Duke when Daniel Jones was still there, and he thrashed him. Like, he came around, grabbed him by the waist, and like slung him down. Completely legal, not dirty, but like Daniel Jones knew he'd been hit. And then playing against Virginia Tech, he hit Hooker, their QB, on a run in midair, just blew the ball out of him. Like completely separated the ball from a forced fumble because he was coming across. Here comes Hooker, and Basham just whack. He when he gets a hold of you, you'll know. He plays with a real strength and real violence. He's fast in space. He ran down Jordan Love when Jordan Love was playing for Nevada, and he loves loop stunts. They line him up at like a 7 outside and just let the first guy hit the tackle, and he scrapes and goes inside on a loop stunt. He did it against Rice and Michigan State and just blasted the quarterback because he's coming. He's got a head of steam. And in a straight line, he can move. So he can overwhelm blockers when he really hits it in the combination. He's got good hands and some fun combos against Virginia Tech. He's feasted against them over a couple of years. Great swim move. He's got a great double hand swipe move this year versus Duke, where he just blasts the tackle. It's almost disrespectful. Like the tackle puts his arms up and he's like, get out, and just crushes the quarterback. So you see him combine those things. And one of my favorite things is, and this is a trend we picked up on last year, the edge rushers really struggle against tight ends because they're big enough and they're more mobile, right? They're super agile, and some guys just can't get around tight ends. He does not struggle with tight ends. He is big enough at 280 versus UNC. They've got a pretty good tight end at UNC. He just kind of went, yeah, nah, and Sam Howell was his. So I like that about him. Bats passes down, even at 6'3", he's got pretty long arms. Saw him do it against Trevor a couple of times where he knew I wasn't going to get to him. So he just kind of played the neutral and was like, all right, I'm gonna play volleyball now. Go ahead, throw it. And his flashes are extremely bright. But the thing about Carlos Basham, the reason he's not sort of edge 1 or DE1 is you want to see the consistency from down to down and game to game. And you want to see him harness those combos and make those flashes the norm. It's not that they're rare. You see them pretty often, but for him to really ascend to that player that you absolutely is a can't miss guy, you want to see the consistency, because sometimes he'll kind of just get locked in and start to push at 280. First move doesn't work and he'll just kind of lock in. He does work throughout the down, and I do appreciate that. He'll keep at it and he'll get cleanup sacks as well. So I feel pretty good about him as a high round pick. But if you're really hoping that he becomes that A1 alpha rusher, you're going to have to see those combos be regularized, if that's a word. And
normalized.
To see that be the norm, to be surprised when he doesn't double move somebody, when he doesn't use 2 moves in combination. And you do see that stuff. So it's there. It's just coaxing that out of him on a more regular basis. Not that he loafs, he doesn't, but sometimes he almost just kind of looks like, well, didn't work and I got bored. So I'm just going to heave on this guy for this down. And he can do so much more because you've seen it. You've seen inside spins and all these combo hand moves and pure speed on the outside, double hand swipes, just blowing guys away with power. Overwhelming guards with speed. He's got it all. You just want to see it more often, but he's a fun player. I really like watching him.
I remember because I just recently went through all the Senior Bowl one-on-ones again, and watching him string his feet and his hands together on like these arm overs outside. He really likes going to his right with that kind of club arm over combo, whether he's lined up on the left side or the right side, he likes going to his right. So sometimes it's inside and sometimes it's outside, depending on where he's lined up, but he feels super comfortable with that combo, which you'll see from defensive linemen that are right-handed sometimes, where they really only feel confident if they're clubbing with their right hand. They don't feel good with it with their left. So they'll kind of only go to one side, but even if he's a one-trick pony in that, it's a hell of a trick. The only guy that I saw stop it was who's that Grambling State center?
Moore.
Moore, yeah. Who just got him, and Moore is just he's a circle.
It's extremely round in a good way. Round. Like I like him a lot, but he can anchor, and if he gets a hold of you, nah.
Yeah,
and that's the kind of thing. Basham was like, that out. It was like, nah, you're not going anywhere.
Yeah, and it was funny because Moore was just holding on to the whole time. Literally, you hear it on the audio. He was like, "Where you going? Where you going? What you doing?
Where you going?" And I forgot to do this on the first one, but I need to. So you guys have been asking in the comments, "What about X? What about X?" Whenever we talk about a list of players, why didn't you talk about blank? What did you talk about? And those are good questions. And I ended up answering them in the comments, and I thought, oh, it'd be so much better to answer that in the actual podcast or video. So because this was such a difficult choice for both of us as we were picking these guys, I made a list of other players I considered at the spot. And for Barmore, stepping back to the defensive tackle, I looked at Aleem McNeil, Jay Tefele from USC, Jonathan Marshall from Arkansas, and Bobby Brown from Texas A&M. Bobby Brown the third from Texas A&M. So if you want to dig in, I'm not going to talk about all those guys, but if you want to dig in, there's some other names. You could do some deep scouting. Tons of fun in that list. Lots of good players. Some real surprises for me. And then for Boogie Bash, the other guys I considered at that sort of 5 spot are a guy that Brett's going to talk about in Peyton Turner and Adetokunbo Ogundeji from Notre Dame. And I had to say his whole first name because apparently his mom doesn't like when announcers shorten it to Ade. She doesn't want her son called Ade. So
those announcers are cowards that don't want to learn the full
apparently. Anyways, so but Ogundeji's a ton of fun. Reminds me some of Basham, and can really mix it up in the pocket. But again, some more names to scout and go a little bit deeper on. So, who is your second disruptor?
So this is one that I'm not sure how many people listening to the podcast are going to know his name, but I think they will eventually because he's going to be one of these. Not small school, but smaller school guys that goes in the top 100 picks, and people are like, who the hell is that? But
what did they
Milton
do?
Williams, what did they do? Milton Williams from Louisiana Tech. I want to read something off here because he just had his pro day today, or no, 2 days ago.
2 days ago, yeah.
So there's something called relative athletic score.
RAS, good stuff.
RAS. It's been used a lot more frequently in the past few years, and what it does is it looks at a prospect's size and weight, and then kind of looks at all of their length and the jumps and the 40 and the splits and the shuttles and the 3-cone and kind of again compares it relatively to other athletes at that position and other athletes that are also at that size. So it's a way to kind of compare like how athletic is this guy compared to other people that play his spot, considering his size and length and everything like that. Like in terms of total athletic package, where does he rank? So Milton Williams is an absolute freak at 6'3", 284, ran a 4.67. His 10 split was 1.65, which is amazing. His 20
staggering at that way.
2.65. Yeah, it's like Aaron Donald. His shuttle was 4.33, which is ridiculous. He had a sub 7 3-cone at 284, which is like 99th percentile, let alone at 284. Like I don't even know if anybody that heavy's ever done that. Like it's insane. 34 on the bench, 38 and a half vertical, again at 6'3", 284, 10-1 in the broad. And I was looking at this tweet, and his relative athletic score was 9.95 out of a possible 10. This numerical formula has been applied to 1,342 defensive end prospects between 1987 and this year. You want to know what he's ranked out of 1,342 prospects? Ever? 8th. He is one of the 8 most athletic defensive linemen in the last 35 years, at least just from pro day numbers. And that's absolutely ridiculous. But then when you turn on the tape, you see it. You absolutely see it. And I think it's hard to say, oh, he's an Aaron Donald level athlete because nobody's numbers ever that I've seen have shown up more on tape than Aaron Donald. I'm not saying it's that. But in terms of you watch how he runs down people in open space, you watch how he corners, like especially the cone drills show up when he corners. Like somebody 285 shouldn't be able to just plant one foot in the ground and immediately change direction like he does. The power that he brings on initial contact, like this dude is a freak. He's an absolute freak. And I'm very excited to see him in the league because I think you can play him at base end and then kick him inside a nickel, kind of like a Kwity Paye. Now, Kwity, I think, is stronger, but I think Milton Williams corners better than Kwity Paye. Like he bends and flattens and finishes rushes better than Kwity Paye, which is horrifying if I was an offensive lineman, because somebody at 285 shouldn't be able to corner like that. He's not as polished as a pass rusher, doesn't use his hands as well, but you give him to an NFL coaching staff in a couple years, just take the athlete and give him to an NFL coaching staff that can develop him. I mean, there is no ceiling. There's literally no ceiling to what he can accomplish. He's that athletic.
Yeah, when you watch his hands, he doesn't have combo moves, and he doesn't have as many hand moves as somebody like Donald. That was one of Donald's hallmarks, especially when we went to the Senior Bowl. But he'd been practicing for years on getting his hands quick and being able to link 2 and even 3 hand moves together, which was the thing that kind of sold me that regardless of all the concerns about Donald's side, Donald was going to be fine, because I was like, he has better hand use than just about any defensive prospect I've ever seen. Now, Milton's hand use is not like that, but when he hits the move,
oh yeah,
like there's some reps of him versus guard. When he hits the move, he is gone. Like he is by them, and he's in the backfield. And at that point, if you're the quarterback, you're literally crapping your pants, because here comes this guy that's 280 and he's already in your face. You're backing up and his hand is like 2 feet from your face, because he beat the guard basically without any friction. And that is not a rare thing on Milton Williams tape. That was a thing on Milton Williams tape. And then like 2 plays later, he just gets under a guy's rib cage and just forklifts him out of the way. And this is a big, like chunky guard. And again, he's not super tall. So he just kind of turns and goes, Chuck. And this guy's like, whoa,
yeah,
this is what you see on tape from the guard, and you're like, okay. All right. Yeah. So that's the first 2 reps I see is him, hand fighting, just basically hand passing a guard and then forklifting the guy out of the way like 2 plays later. And you're like, okay, this guy's got tools. We can work with this. So I'm really glad you brought him up. He's a guy I considered, certainly when I was looking at the defensive tackle, and after his pro day, I said, referencing a conversation that you and I had, that everybody's looking for that flashing 3 tech in this draft, and everybody's kind of like, Aleem is kind of that, but Aleem is not that. He's not that flashy, penetrating. I'm talking about like a Geno Atkins sort of crushing, slashing 3 tech. Milton Williams might be like, that's the guy that has the goods that could make that come true with the right coaching staff. He's got everything, all the raw materials he needs to make that work. So, and getting a ton of buzz, especially after his pro day, but people are now going back to his tape because of the numbers, and they're like, ooh, wait, he can play too. It's not just that he's a workout warrior. So super fun player. I'm bullish on Milton Williams. He ain't gonna last 100 picks. People are always like, oh, he's not making top 100. Like, I've talked to the very few people I know in the league who actually know, who I don't want to say no, because nobody knows about the draft, but who are as ear to the ground as they can be this time of year. And I sent one of them a mock draft. I started doing mock drafts the other day, and I sent one of them a mock draft. And he was like, yeah, Milton Williams at 170. Right.
Oh, there's no chance.
He's like, he's not getting past 100. He's not a triple digit guy. And I was like, okay, cool. And I believe it. So anyways, the league is very bullish on Milton Williams. But my third is a guy very close to you in proximity, Osa Odigizua. Now, this is the younger brother of the Odigizua that came out 2 or 3 years ago from UCLA. And Osa is as good, if not better. And that's funny because I liked his older brother quite a bit. But Osa's got one of the craziest builds you're ever going to see. He is 6'2", so short-ish for a football player, for defensive lineman. 280, but he has 34-inch arms.
I was about to bring that up. He's like, he's stocky,
got,
but also Groot.
Right. He's also Groot. He is Groot. I am Groot. And you'll see him use his power. So really fun player. Redshirt senior, by the way. So he's been there a while. Played mostly inside for UCLA. And this is where it gets weird, where you can't really go through a position list and say, oh, he's 6'2", 280, he's 5 tech or out or farther out. No, he largely played either nose or 3 tech for UCLA. has a very good bull rush, uses that 6'2" frame and leverage, drops his backside, and can move people with just pure power. And then the funny thing is, with those arms, just reach around somebody. Even if he hasn't beat them, if they're still in front of him, he can push them back into the quarterback and reach over and like grab their shoulder pads, which for a quarterback is a very unsettling thing. You see many of them kind of react like, what? Like, I have a blocker in front of me. How is this guy getting a hold of me? But he just literally whack reaches over.
I think he got like I don't know if they called it a fumble or a pass batted, but he got that like on a left tackle. Oh God, what game was it was somebody with red uniforms. I don't know if it was OU or if it was like Wazoo or something like that. But I remember he got over the outside shoulder left tackle and just swiped and hit the ball. And it's like, you can only do that if your arms are that long.
He's got those dudes. Amazing range. So an example of what I'm talking about, it's the Oregon game in 2020. Gets that good leverage drive on a guard, drives him basically right back into the quarterback's lap, and then just reaches around and grabs the back of his jersey and kind of just pulls the two of them down together. It's kind of a sandwich deal. If he gets under a block, like if they don't quite get him, he's not a guy that's not quick. He is super quick. And so you'll see this against zone schemes in the Oklahoma game in 2018, which was his first year playing. Trey Sermon was still at Oklahoma, and they basically ran a zone right. It shifted right in front of him, and the gap was open, and he went straight through and nailed Trey Sermon for about a 3 or 4 yard loss. Just like, all right, if you're not going to touch me, I'm low enough and quick enough, I can just squeeze right between you guys and nail the running back. So too quick for a lot of guards. If you watch the 2018 Washington game, oh yeah, he gave Jake Browning a day.
Remember him, Jake Browning?
Yeah, Jake Browning. I was like, who is that? And I was like, oh, that's not East. That's Browning. Okay, that's 2018, which means he's been doing it for a while. Again, redshirt senior, he's been there. But you see him against all these teams: Oklahoma, Oregon, Washington. There's some plays against like Cincinnati where he shows that forklift stack shed. They played Cincinnati in 2019. He shows a true stack and shed. He's got the guard. He gets extended with those arms. Here comes the back, and he just kind of goes like this and almost uses the guard as leverage to push himself towards the back. It's like a 3 yard tackle for a loss. And again, when he's that close, when he's reduced the angle and pushed the guard into the backfield, it's like a goalie being out in your face. Like there's nowhere to go for that guy. And with those arms, he was never getting by him. So he's got this weird mix of skills where he's got power. He can come from the outside. He plays with great leverage. If you don't touch him, he's well fast enough to flush the quarterback or even a fast running back. So strangely at this kind of weird, like, what do you do with him spot? Again, I would probably play him at like a 5 because he could thrive there with the length. But on passing downs, I'm moving this guy inside because he's going to whip a lot of guards with his combination of sort of that short leverage and speed. But other guys I looked at this spot were Milton Williams, Jalen Twyman from Pittsburgh, who's getting a lot of crap about a lousy pro day. But if you look at his tape was
different.
His tape is full of these plays. Like he was trying every bit to live up to the Aaron Donald rep at Pitt, and he came damn close. Don't sleep on Twyman. Somebody's going to get a value on Twyman because they're going to lean on the pro day numbers and they're not going to lean on the tape. And the tape is a disruptor. Like Jalen Twyman
that's why I was so surprised by the pro day numbers, though, because I was like, it didn't look that way on tape.
I think Pittsburgh is the only school that kind of was like mad at their players and like, I don't know, like watered the surface before they ran or something, because everybody else like sprayed stickum before people ran, because there's been more 4.2s and 4.3s this year than I've ever seen. And then the numbers come out of Pittsburgh and it's like 4.6 and a 4.9. And you're like, for a safety and a defensive lineman, and you're like, they look faster. Like, did they not pay their library fines or something? Or are they just mad?
Did you see the Caleb Farley video, by the way?
Yeah.
Okay. So for people that don't know, Caleb Farley, I don't know if it was him or his agent or something like that, released a video of him running a 40 in like 4.24.
Yeah. 4.2.
But here's the thing. It starts out at like a certain camera angle and then cuts the first step of the like just skips. And then all of a sudden the clock starts, and it's like, you realize we're not idiots, right? Like we can see the video. It's cut. We're not dumb. Like, we know he's fast. He ran 24 miles an hour.
Yeah, no, he's crazy
lie
fast.
to us.
Yeah,
you don't need to lie to us though. Like,
fast.
come on.
But a lot of the pro days, what we're alluding to is a lot of the pro days with COVID, no combine, no centralized anything. You see numbers every day. Guy ran a 4.2. Guy ran a 4.2. Guy ran a 4.2. I'm like, usually there's like 2 to maybe 5 4.2s. Usually like 2 or 3 at the combine for all 300 participants. There have been like 3 a day. It's been
ridiculous. I lost count.
Yeah, I mean, everybody running 4.4
is.
Yeah, everybody running 4.4, like big guys running 4.4, guys that are 250 who are linebackers running 4.4. Oh yeah, he ran a 4.45. I'm like, yeah, sure he did.
That's why, like, I rely on Andre Weirgarden, who literally for all like the major prospect 40s, he'll do frame by frame and then do the actual time. And sometimes it's faster and sometimes it's slower, but at least it's something you can believe. Like he did Justin Fields today, who was reported to run at 4.44, and then he slowed it down frame by frame. He's like, no, it was actually 4.4 flat. So, he doesn't bullshit with it or anything like that. But I just rely more on those because it's
the straight pro day numbers that are unadulterated, if they're not scout numbers, like Jim Nagy's been reporting NFL scout numbers for his 40s. Again, the stuff that comes from agents or trainers that are being paid by the athletes, like, of course they want those numbers to look good. They want their guy to be fast. So a little bit tough to put a whole bunch of stock in speed numbers this year. But who is your third disruptor?
Well, I'll get to my third in a second because I forgot to tell you this when you were talking about Osa. You know what team has apparently been talking to Osa quite a bit, and as soon as he said it, it made so much sense to me because he's a perfect fit, and he kind of reminds me a little bit in different ways of both of the guys they already have there. Pittsburgh. In terms of playing that 5, kicking into 3, like he's got a little bit of Tuitt to him. He's got a little bit of Hayward to him. He's not those guys entirely. But in terms of just like the strength, the length, the untapped potential, he reminds me a lot of when Tuitt was. And I have a higher grade on Tuitt when he was coming out of Notre Dame. Like I had him as like a top 15 pick because I loved him. Like he was like my ideal 5 technique, and he's bigger and a little bit stronger. But Osa's not that far behind, and it makes total sense that Pittsburgh's looking at him because he is so their prototype in terms of what they look for at defensive end. So just wanted to bring that up. My third guy is Cam Sample from Tulane, who's been getting a little bit of buzz. He also recently had a pro day. Again, these are all from NFL scouts. Jim Nagy tweeted them out, so that they're not the more bullshit numbers, I guess you could say, but measured in at 6'2 3/4, 267, which is pretty good size. 33.5-inch arms, which again, more than adequate. 40 in about 4.8. Some scouts had him at 4.79, some had him at 4.81, so we'll split the baby and call it 4.8. Vertical, which you can't fake, 37. Broad, almost 10 feet at 9.8. Short shuttle at 4.48, 3-cone at 7.39. So I almost look at him as like a diet version of Milton Williams. He's a little bit smaller, but still really explosive. But I also think he's a little bit further on the spectrum in terms of polish. I think he uses his hands a little bit better. I think he takes advantage of his natural leverage a little bit better. He's got a wicked inside move when he's lined up as a 3 technique in terms of how he gets by guards. It's pretty gross, and he's really, really productive as a pass rusher, both from the edge and from inside, because he's too quick for guards, but he's really good at leverage and power against tackles that are mostly like 4 inches on him. So he just gets under him and gives that long arm stab and just shoves him to the back of the pocket. So he kind of varies up his rushing style depending on what position he plays, but a little bit more polished than Milton Williams, but still a really good athlete in his own right. In terms of where he's going to play in the league, it's tough to say, because with his measurements and his physical profile, I could I could see him thriving again in one of those defenses where it's like we're playing you on the edge as a base end and then kicking you inside as a pass rusher. Miami does that. New England does it. Anybody in the Seattle mold does it. But the hard part is that not every defense operates that way.
No.
Some defenses are going to want you to be full-time edge, which I don't think he is. Some defenses are going to want you to be full-time 3, which I don't think he is. So there's going to be some teams that don't really value him at all. And there's going to be some teams that value him a lot. So it's really hard for me to kind of project where he's going to go because of that.
Yeah, I want to see him in a 4-man line. I like Cam Sample a lot, and I want to see him in a 4-man line. I do not want to see him in a base sort of 3-4, where they're even rushing sort of nickel out of, because I'm with you. I really don't think he's a true edge, but as a straight 5, like just thinking about the Bears, right? The Bears wouldn't like him as a straight 5 because he's not big enough. He's not Bilal Nichols, right? He's not 280, 285, right? They want their guy.
They would want Milton. They would want Milton, to be honest.
Yeah, absolutely. And so I want to see him in a 4-man line, like a true 4-man line. Even if it's 4-man line running nickel, like I want to see him as the edge in a 4-man line, like the defensive end, I should say, not edge, not to confuse things. But I like Sample a lot, and I actually have one of his teammates as my sleeper. And I forgot to mention Taquan Graham, just to satisfy all the Texan fans, because we got off on a Jalen Twyman tangent, but it was Milton Williams, Jamin Twyman, and Taquan Graham were my 3 that I considered when I was looking at OSA. But let's get into the sleepers a little bit, because I went through a bunch of guys looking for this, and you might be like, hey, man, you didn't pick any like true edges, right? You didn't pick any of those fast guys outside. And just hats off to Azeez Ojulari. We know we haven't talked about him. We'll find a way to talk about him. He's the guy that everybody's talking about, kind of like Barmore at the top of the defensive tackle rankings. Ojulari's talking about. He's the guy that is near the top of everybody's edge rankings. We know we're not talking about him. We know he's there. Good player. We'll talk about him in a bit. But I actually ended up with, again, because I couldn't decide, sue me, 2 sleepers. And the first one is Hamaka Rashid from Oregon State. And I had this guy on my list. I'd seen him before, but just pretty much in highlights. I dug into him last night and came away really impressed. This guy plays. Both guys from Oregon State play really well this year. Their running back and Hamaka Rashid, who is crazy versatile, played 3 spots for them, really smart, good length. Reminds me of a version of what people wanted Leonard Floyd to be in Chicago, which is that versatile, can go forward, can go backwards. And they played him at a true sort of 4-3 DE. They played him at a 3, kicked him inside on passing downs. And again, he beat guards with length and quickness. And then they played him as a true outside linebacker that was covering tight ends occasionally and going backwards. Really smart player, doesn't often win on his first rush, first rush move, which is what everybody's looking for in a kind of a true edge, but wins all the time on his second move. He's just in the right spot. When he spins around, the quarterback's there. When he redirects, he's got a nice little yank move. He's got good long arms. Great versatile player. Really like him. And then my other guy, I've got a question for you. Who's the best spin move in a defensive end or edge that you can remember in the league?
I mean, it's got to be Dwight Freeney.
Got to be Dwight Freeney, right? That's the answer. If you're looking at true spin moves, and spin moves are one of those moves where almost everybody tries them, and very few players have one that's really effective. Mm-hmm. A lot of times we've talked about this. Player will spin in place. The offensive tackle is like, I'll just wait on your hips. Like, nah, you're not going anywhere. Okay, now I'll re-engage. Or you're trying to spin off contact. Guy just puts his sort of brace up there and you don't make any lateral movement. Lots of spin moves are ineffective. Some of them work, but some of them are kind of like, we usually end up saying, he's got an okay spin move. He's got a decent spin move. Patrick Johnson from Tulane. So Cam Sample's teammate, the true edge, smaller guy, more linebacker for sure. Best spin move I've seen since Freeney. Like he has that inside plant snap, and I'm like a yard and a half to your right or left, and you're really going, now I'm off balance and I'm reaching, I'm lunging, and I don't have any leverage on you. I'm not saying he's Freeney, but his spin move is legit. He's quick and he has that instinct, right? We talk about that finishing instinct for a rusher. Like, does he get home? Patrick Johnson gets home. He's a lot of fun. He's way down the board. He is not going to be talked about in the top flight of edge rushers. There are other things he doesn't do well. He can be overwhelmed by power pretty easily if he does get engaged, but man, he's got that finishing instinct. He's got pretty good speed, decent bend. I wouldn't say bend is his best quality, but that spin move is legit. And after watching like, I don't know, tens, hundreds of spin moves from all kinds of different players that just never work, it's so refreshing to see a guy that like is getting clean with the spin move, and that's Patrick Johnson.
You know who low-key had a great spin move coming out of college, but the problem was he didn't have anything else. and that ended up bearing out in the NFL. Vic Beasley. You remember Vic Beasley's spin move at Clemson? Oh, it was dirty. Oh, it was so good.
I'm with you. I got deep into the Vic Beasley debate because it was the Leonard Floyd, comparison. Leonard Floyd, you should take Vic Beasley, right? And I was not a huge Beasley fan because he was not super, like he was more one trick pony, and I didn't think the trick was that great. The pony was that great. Anyways, was never a huge Vic Beasley fan. There were a lot of Bears fans that wanted Vic Beasley the year he came out. So yeah, I have a little PTSD about Beasley.
Well, my sleeper is somebody who you mentioned earlier on the show, and that's Peyton Turner from Houston. I mean, we talk about Groot arms with Osa
and Groot
Peyton
legs.
He's got Groot everything. I mean,
he's got Groot legs. He's so long. When scouts say he's like high hipped or long legged, right? Yeah. That's Peyton Turner. He's that guy. He reminds me a little bit of Chris Jones, just physical build wise.
Oh, because Jones's hip bones are basically at his rib cage. Yeah. I
that's
can
the
see
one.
That.
Yeah.
He's 6'7", 275, if I remember correctly, but super lanky, 35-inch arms, which is like top 1% of arm length among all positions. He's a little bit raw, not super bendy, but how he uses his length and power, you can work with it. If it was up to me, I'd add 10 more pounds, put him at 285, play him as a 5 technique in a 3-4, because he is so damn long that you can't block him. You can't get into his chest because he won't let you. And so I think that's really his value, is you bulk him up and you really just lean into the length and the power. Like, don't worry about quickness. Don't worry about bend. He's not going to have that even if he goes down to 260. Like, he'll be decent, but he won't be as quick as some other guys who play the position. So lean into the traits that he does have, which is length and power, and let him win with that. Like we talk about, fits for Pittsburgh. Like, he fits Pittsburgh absolutely as like a developmental 5 technique. I think he fits Vic Fangio as a developmental 5 tech. Like, really any of these defenses that like to play 5-2, meaning like 3 defensive end or 3 defensive, like true defensive linemen, 2 outside linebackers at edge, and then 2 inside linebackers. Wade Phillips does that. Fangio and all the Fangio tree does that. They do it up in Pittsburgh as well. Like, any of those kind of defenses, I think Peyton Turner fits, as long as they really lean into the length and the power, because that's what he has.
If he hits the long arm move in the shoulder, this particularly with that length, if he leans and hits the opposite shoulder and then gets the right hand pretty much anywhere, I don't care if it's your rib cage, under your armpit, on top of your shoulder pad,
you're done.
If he turns you like that and pushes, you're so far away from him that he can literally walk to the quarterback. He doesn't need to sprint. You're literally twisted around like this with his hand under your arm. And if he hits you anywhere from elbow to mid hip, if he gets that first stab in, he's just creating this wide open door because he's so long. It's crazy.
I meant to read this off, by the way, just because I think it's crazy. And we didn't get to mention it, but with the Seahawks releasing Jarran Reed, and then him immediately going and signing with the Chiefs, their interior defensive line rotation is Derek Nottie, Chris Jones, Tershawn Wharton, Colin Saunders, and now Jarran Reed, or Jarran Reed. I can't remember what his preferred pronunciation is. They're like, it's like a hockey line. Like, they're 3 shifts deep on interior defense. They don't need all these guys. they just have them. And it's like, it's one of the deepest interior defensive line rotations that I've seen in like the last 10 years. Like if they get injuries at the position, it literally doesn't matter. The only one that matters is Chris Jones, because he's like the X factor, but all the other guys are all starter worthy. All of them.
You know what I can't wait to see out of that line?
What?
The first goal line stand in Kansas City.
Oh,
where Spags runs out
all
like
5 of them.
5 of them. And he's just like, don't. Go ahead. Do what you want to do. We'll play, we'll play the guys we have around the edge, but like you're not coming through the middle. It's not happening. It's going to be so much fun.
Wait a minute. It looks like his signing has been. Why hasn't he signed yet? I saw the thing.
Who, John Reed?
Yeah.
I don't know. I haven't looked. There's been a lot of that this year, though, where
I saw a note that
2
he was
weeks
going
later,
to...
you're like, oh, they're signing now? I thought they signed 2 weeks ago when they announced it. But there's been a lot of funky business with the lower cap in terms of when people sign.
You know what? I think it might be just there because he's not there yet. Like it looks like they agreed to terms, but he's not officially signed yet. I think they're trying to get him in the building still. That makes sense. Because I was like, I saw it on Twitter like 2 days ago that he was signed.
Oh, yeah. But there's been a ton of those. I just saw a bunch of signings for Chicago that literally were like 2.5 weeks ago in terms of releases and signings. And they're like, oh, it's all official now. And I was like, now? Like you talked about that 2 weeks ago. What the heck?
Yeah.
So much weirdness in a low cap year.
What do you say we get out of here? Because this has been a jam-packed episode that it's got to be over 2 hours by now.
Yeah, I just want to say I'm so thankful to Brandon for coming on. I love personally, just selfishly talking to guys like him who are so well connected and study so hard. I just wanted to shut up through that entire interview and listen, because everything he says to me is a chance to learn and get better at a position that I'm still learning about. For sure. Offensive line, I've had my hits and misses for sure, but I always feel like I can get a lot better there. Like I have a lot of room to improve, and time with a guy like Brandon is just gold to me. Like everything he said was like, oh, I don't look at that hard enough when I scout guards, or, when I'm talking about center, oh man, I don't lean on that enough, or, I do this and he does that. Should I look at my process? And the answer is yes, if you're talking to a guy like Brandon. So can't thank him enough for coming on. We've got some other really cool guests lined up pre-draft. We're going to be recording those interviews next week, the week after. So you'll see them roll out up to draft time, but couldn't be more thrilled about that. What do you have coming on Film Room? I know you have a couple to edit.
Well, I just released the Teven Jenkins episode this morning. And then the same day that this comes out, I'm releasing kind of part 2 in a series of like underrated players where I'm going to be professing my love for Cam McGrone and Nico Collins and obviously Jamar Johnson, who's like my favorite guy ever in this class. So I'm going to be talking about some undervalued players. Some you've heard of, some you maybe haven't, and just kind of running through a list of guys that I will never have time to do a full Film Room on, but I still wanted to get my thoughts out there of just how much I love them. So this is a loaded class, and I felt like there was no way I was going to get through everybody without doing those kind of shows. So I find it fun to do.
No, which is one of the reasons I'm really glad we did this show, because even though we didn't get to talk about all those guys, we got to list out a bunch of guys that other people can go dig in on, take a look at, see where they grade them. Maybe they've heard of them, maybe they haven't. I hope you heard of at least one person during this episode that you weren't super familiar with. That's the goal. So this will be dropping midweek, and then we're going to do a live stream on Friday, right?
Yes.
Okay, so
I'm not entirely sure what draft related thing we're going to talk about. Maybe it'll just be a Q&A stream, but
I think it's probably going to be a Q&A stream. Let the people lead this one. We'll do a couple hours of Q&A on a Friday. Bring a beverage, check it out. In the meantime, if you've been oogling this very fine Bootleg shirt, we did open the Bootleg store. Can't thank everybody that ordered enough. So check out bootlegfootballpodcast.com for all the BFP merch. We've had a ton of orders just in the first week, including several from overseas. Thank you very much to our German fans and our British fans, people that paid a whole bunch of shipping to get a couple of pint glasses and a shirt sent over to England or Germany. And everybody that's picked up their team color shirt. And if you're getting that stuff, go ahead and post it on social media. We've already had folks post their shirts and their glasses with beer in them, all kinds of fun stuff. Great to see that stuff out in the wild. I will have a new shirt on Friday because I got my first promo package. Brett's is on the way. So you'll be seeing that here, but you can get all the good stuff at bootlegfootballpodcast.com. I will be doing a Bears Over Beers this week with JB. What are we talking about? We're talking about free agency and some kind of setup stuff for Chicago about how they're going to line up into the draft, but just a jam-packed week. Going to be guesting on field goals with Brandon Schultz, our buddy, at the end of the week. And yeah, just a ton of spot. I bet you're getting a ton of radio spot stuff too. I got 3 inquiries today, and I was
every
like,
day.
yeah. And I was like, I'm actually booked this week every day. Sorry. Maybe next week, but no, can't get enough. It's draft season. Strike while the iron's hot. We're going to bring you all the content we can. Really appreciate you all following along with us. So much fun. Hope you enjoyed the episode. Put suggestions in the comments about things you want to see. And we will do everything we can to touch on that topic if it's not already in our schedule.
Yep. We'll see you guys in a couple days for that bootleg Q&A. And until then, see you later.